Dear friends, I warmly welcome you to this course on Satyarth Prakash by Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati, a text that occupies a central place in modern Indian religious and intellectual history. This course is not merely a study of a book, but an invitation to engage with ideas that challenge blind belief, encourage rational inquiry, and uphold truth as the foundation of life and society. Through this course, we will explore Maharshi Dayananda's fearless quest for truth, his interpretation of the Vedas, and his call for moral, social, and intellectual reform. Satyarth Prakash urges us to think critically, question respectfully, and align our conduct with reason, ethics, and universal welfare. The course on Satyarth Prakash offers a systematic study of one of the most influential texts of the modern world religious and philosophical thought. Authored by Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati, the founder of Arya Samaj, Satyarth Prakash, which literally means light upon true meanings, is a seminal work that presents a rational, Vedic, and reformist interpretation of religion, society, and ethics. Written in late 19th century, the text emerged during a period of intense intellectual and social ferment in India. It addresses fundamental questions concerning the nature of God, soul, karma, salvation, education, social order, and the authority of the Vedas. At the same time, it critically examines prevailing religious practices, superstitions, and institutionalized distortions with Hindu society, as well as doctrines of other religious traditions using reason, scriptural evidence, and ethical analysis. This course aims to familiarize students with the philosophical foundations, reformist vision, and the critical methodology employed by Maharshi Dayananda. Through close reading and discussion of the selected chapters, students will understand Dayananda's emphasis on rational inquiry, scriptural authenticity, moral responsibility, and social reforms. Special attention will be given to his advocacy of monotheism, rejection of the idol worship, promotion of the women's education, and insistence on universal human values grounded in the Vedas. The study of Satyarth Prakash is not limited to religious philosophy alone. It provides insight into the intellectual roots of the modern Indian reform movements, the rise of cultural self consciousness, and the shaping of nationalist thought. The text encourages critical thinking, dialogue, and ethical reflection, making it highly relevant for contemporary discussion on religion, society, and human values. By the end of the course, a participant will be able to comprehend the central theme of Satyarth Prakash, analyze the Vedic and rationalist principles advocated by Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati, examine key critiques against popular sects, blind faith and ritualism, evaluate the impact of Dayananda's reform movement on Indian society and nationalism, apply critical thinking and ethical reasoning based upon Vedic philosophy. Dear friends, before we start with the lectures on Satyarth Prakash, it is interesting to note that when the first edition of Satyarth Prakash was published, Swami Dayanand Saraswati did not personally supervise its final contents while he was engaged in delivering public lectures. During one such lecture, in which he strongly criticized the practice of meat eating, a member of the audience stood up and accused him of making a false statement. The person pointed out that according to the published text of Satyarth Prakash, Swami Dayanand appeared to sanction meat eating in certain contexts, which contradicted his public position. This contradiction, this confrontation made Maharshi Dayanand aware that interpolations and corruptions had been introduced into the first edition of the text by individuals with vested interests. Realizing the seriousness of matter, he decided that the work needed to be republished in an authentic form. Consequently, Swami Dayananda once again dictated Satyarth Prakash, which was then published as a corrected edition. This incident compels us to reflect deeply on the process through which Indian texts have been transmitted. If a work composed in the 19th century under relatively recent historical conditions could be subjected to interpolation and distortion contrary to Vedic principles, it is reasonable to consider the likelihood that much older texts, such as Manusmriti and the Puranas, may also have undergone similar corruptions over centuries of transmission. It is a matter of serious concern that no systematic inquiry appears to have been undertaken by the then Arya Samaj scholars into the corruptions found in the first edition of Satyarth Prakash. Even Maharshi Dayananda himself, despite recognizing the presence of interpolations, did not institute a formal investigation into how, why, and by whom these alterations were introduced. Had such an inquiry been conducted, important truths might have come to light. Truths that could have shed broader light on the long-standing problem of interpolations and the textual corruptions in other ancient Indian works as well. The absence of such scrutiny invites deeper reflection. The recurring pattern of distortion suggests that some organized agency or ideological force may have been operating behind these corruptions. It is reasonable to consider that forces hostile to Hinduism or those seeking to misrepresent and weaken the Vedic tradition may have played a role in misleading the Hindu society away from its authentic textual foundations. This concern becomes even more significant when viewed in historical context of the 19th century. During this period, figures such as Thomas Macaulay and his associates actively worked to restructure the Indian education system. Traditional Indian learning was dismissed as narrow, religious, and backward. Under the banner of modernity and secularism, systematically marginalized indigenous knowledge traditions. In this same intellectual climate, Max Muller openly expressed in his correspondence with the British authorities that his translations and interpretations of the Vedas were intended to serve a large civilizational purpose. He went so far as to suggest that if Christianity failed to prevail in India, even after such efforts, even after such distortions, the responsibility for that failure would lie elsewhere. Such statements raise important questions about the intent, methodology, and the impact of colonial era textual engagement with Indian scriptures. Taken together, these historical developments compel us to critically examine the process of textual transmission, interpretation, and education in colonial India. They underline the need for vigilant, source based scholarship to distinguish authentic Vedic thought from later interpolations and ideological distortions. So far as the life and intellectual journey of Maharshi Dayanand is concerned, let me say he was one of the greatest religious and social reformers of modern India and the founder of Arya Samaj. His life represents a powerful quest for truth rooted in Vedas, and his ideas played a crucial role in religious reforms, social awakening, and the rise of Indian nationalism. For determining the birth date of Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati, the following points should be kept in mind. Number 1. Maharshi Dayanand was born in a Pauranic family. Number 2. His father was Shaivite. Number 3. He was named Mool Shankar. This name is formed of two words, Mool plus Shankara. It shows that his birth had relationship with two things. Number 1, Moola. Number 2, Shankara. Mool is the name of a nakshatra, which shows that he was born in Moola nakshatra. And Mool nakshatra, when joined with Ganda Yoga, becomes a very famous combination. Shankara also shows that he was born to a period related to Shiva. That is why his devout Pauranic father named him Mool Shankara. And number 4th thing to remember is that in Gujarat, Kartikadi Vikram Samvat is prevalent. Kartikadi Vikram Samvat means in Gujarat, Vikrami Samvat starts from Kartik Shukla Pratipada. Kartik Melas are also organized in various parts of Gujarat on Kartik Purnima to celebrate New Year. But in North India and rest of the India, the Vikrami Samvat starts on Chaitra Shukla Pratipada. So there is a difference of 6 months in the commencement of year between Gujarat and the rest of India. Gujarati New Samvatsar starts after 6 months. Thus, From the above slide, it is quite clear that Dayananda's birth Samvat 1881, Vikrami Samvat, started from Kartika Shukla Pratipada, that is 23rd October 1824, and ended on Ashwin Amavasya, that is 10th November 1825. As such, Vikram Samvat 1881, which is Maharshi Dayananda's birth Samvat, it will start as per Gujarati calendar from 23rd October 1824 and end on 10th November 1825. If date of birth of Maharshi Dayananda is considered 1824, as is quoted by all contemporary Arya Samaj scholars who were contemporary to Swami Dayananda, and all foreign historians and other historians who were contemporary to Swami Dayananda or who came later. If the date of birth of Maharshi Dayananda is considered 1824 AD, then we shall have to search the exact date of birth of Maharshi Dayananda between the period 23rd October 1824 to 31st December 1824. There is no other means. So, search for the date of birth of Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati. We shall have to find out the moon's conjunction with Mool Nakshatra during this period. And we find three probable dates. Number 1, Kartik Shukla Panchami 1881 Vikrami Samvat, which corresponds to 27th October 1824. On that day, it is Moola Nakshatra and Wednesday. Second probable date is Margashirsha Shukla 3, 1881 Vikrami Samvat. This corresponds to 23rd November 1824. Again, the Mool Nakshatra is there and Tuesday is there. And the third probable date is Pausha month according to North Indian calendar, and Margashirsha month as per South Indian calendar 1881. That is Amavasya. It corresponds to 20th December 1824. On that day, it is also Mool Nakshatra and Monday. And this day, 20th December 1824, is the Somavati Amavasya. Means Amavasya is falling on Monday. And it has a great significance for Pauranic families. Somavati Amavasya is celebrated to worship Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati. On this day, devotees worship Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati by observing fast to please the deities for peace and harmony. Also, as per popular beliefs of Pauranikas in Gujarat, it is said that if a female observes this fast, it will ward off widowhood. So, we can narrow down our search on the above points. One is Moola Nakshatra, that is occurring in all the three deities, but another name is Shankara, which is coinciding to some date which is famous for Shiva. So that way Paus Amavasya. It is the Somvati Amavasya, 20th December. So, Paus Amavasya, 20th December 1824, belongs to the Shiva and has great significance for the Shaivite Pauranic family. Hence, 20th December 1824, Monday, that is Paush North Indian and Margshirsh South Indian or Gujarati Amavasya, is the probable date of the birth of Maharshi Dayananda. We know very well that Swami Dayananda was born into a conservative Brahmin family, deeply devoted to Shaivism, the worship of Lord Shiva. From an early age, Mool Shankar showed exceptional intelligence and a sharp questioning mind. His father was well versed in Sanskrit and religious rituals, and he ensured that Mool Shankar received a traditional education in Vedic chanting, grammar, logic, and philosophy. But the turning point that came in his life is very important to understand. It was a decisive moment in Mool Shankar's life that occurred during a Shivaratri night vigil. While observing worship, he noticed a mouse running over the Shiva idol and eating the offerings. This deeply disturbed him and led him to question, how can a deity who cannot protect itself protect the universe? This incident ignited a lifelong inquiry into true religion and the nature of God. Another traumatic influence was the early death of his sister and later his uncle, which made him reflect deeply on impermanence, death, and liberation. Rejecting ritualism, idol worship, and blind faith, Mool Shankar renounced the household life at a young age, leaving home in search of spiritual truth. For nearly 25 years, he lived the life of a wandering monk. During this period, he studied under various scholars and yogis across India. The most significant influence on his intellectual development was Swami Vrajananda Dandi, a blind but highly learned Vedic scholar of Mathura. Under his guidance, Dayananda mastered Vedas and Vedangas, Sanskrit grammar, logic, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. Swami Vrajananda insisted on returning to the original Vedic sources, free from later distortions. At the completion of his education, Vrajananda asked Swami Dayananda to spread true Vedic knowledge and eradicate ignorance, superstitions, and social evils. This vow became the foundation of Dayananda's mission. Philosophical vision and religious thought, Maharshi Dayananda believed that Vedas are the supreme authority and the earliest source of divine knowledge. God is one, formless, omniscient, and omnipotent. Idol worship, pilgrimages, ritual sacrifices, and priestly dominance are later corruptions. True religion is based on reason, morality, and universal welfare. He famously declared, back to the Vedas, Vedon ki or loto. His interpretation of the Vedas emphasized ethical living, rational inquiry, and social responsibility. Here I would like to present a comparative reflection on Swami Dayanand Saraswati and Gautam Buddha, two towering figures who responded profoundly to the reality of human suffering yet arrived at fundamentally different conclusions. Both encountered the same existential truths: old age, suffering, and death, and were deeply disturbed by these experiences. In response, Gautam Buddha renounced his married life in search of liberation from suffering and ultimately identified nirvana as the sole escape from the cycle of sorrow. His spiritual journey led him to advocate renunciation as the path to emancipation, culminating in the propagation of Buddhism as a distinct religious tradition. On the other hand, Maharshi Dayananda responded in a markedly different manner. He too renounced domestic life, not to escape suffering, but to understand its true nature and underlying causes. Through rigorous inquiry into the Vedas and rational reflection, Dayananda concluded that ignorance, misunderstanding, and deviation from truth, rather than existence itself, are the real sources of human suffering. Consequently, he did not seek liberation by withdrawal from society. Instead, he confronted suffering directly, analyzed its causes, and worked actively to remove them. Dayananda applied this insight to the condition of Indian society, which he saw as burdened by superstitions, social stagnation, and distorted religious practices. He emerged as a fearless critic of these forces, believing that they were responsible for India's moral and intellectual decline. His solution was not renunciation of the world, but reform through knowledge, truth, and return to authentic teachings of the Vedas. Thus, a sharp philosophical distinction emerges between two thinkers. One proposed emancipation through renunciation as the escape from suffering, while the other proposed enlightenment through truth as the cure for suffering. While Buddha established a new religious path, Maharshi Dayananda initiated a reformative movement within Hinduism through the Arya Samaj, aiming to regenerate society from within. Dayananda articulated his vision in his magnum opus Satyarth Prakash, Light on True Meanings, where he expounded the philosophical, cultural, social, economic, and political principles embedded in the Vedas and Smritis. His life and work stand as a powerful testimony to the belief that truth, knowledge, and reform, not withdrawal, are the true means of overcoming human suffering. Dayanand Saraswati was not merely a religious reformer. He was also a bold social critic. He strongly opposed caste by birth, untouchability, child marriage, sati, gender inequality. He supported women's education, widow remarriage, equal moral and spiritual rights for all. He advocated education in Sanskrit and Hindi, believing that cultural regeneration was essential for national revival. The famous historian Jaiswal is to be quoted here, and I quote. He says, The rise of Dayananda in the 19th century is a phenomenon which baffles the historians. Nevertheless, there is such life germ in the civilization of Hindus which evidently make it indestructible and which are beyond the ken of that empiricist observer called historian. The present reformed and rejuvenated Hinduism is solely a gift of Dayanand Saraswati. Dayanand had the humanity of Buddha, but he combined the preservative complex of Shankara. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, one of the leaders of Indian National Congress, and twice the President of Indian Republic, was more specific about the role and contribution of Rishi Dayananda in the making of modern India. According to him, I quote, Swami Dayananda was a social reformer, profound scholar, and great fearless leader who had rendered valuable services through Arya Samaj movement, for which India will remain indebted to him. He was a true nationalist by every test and a far-sighted leader. It is amazing how he anticipated so far back those very things which Mahatma Gandhi later included in his constructive program and greatly emphasized during the active struggle against the foreign rule. With surprising foresight, Dayanand propagated the ideas of having a national language, Harijan uplift, women's education, the use of hand-woven cloth, and Swadeshi goods, which Mahatma Gandhi associated with the freedom struggle. 50 years later, all his life, Dayanand dreamt of liberating India from foreign rule. There is one more politician, Dr. Keskar. He was the Union Minister in Jawaharlal Nehru's cabinet. He remarks, I quote, Mahatma Gandhi had only taken up the work begun by Swami Dayananda and completed it. Not only these Indian scholars, but the renowned philosophers, Romain Rolland from France. He finds in Dayananda a man with the nature of a lion whom Europe is too apt to forget when she judges India. She will probably be forced to remember him to her cost. He finds in him a rare combination of a thinker and of action with a genius of leadership. Another great visionary American scholar, Davis Andrew Jackson, hurls praises on Swami Dayananda in a poetic style. I quote, I behold a fire that is universal, the fire of infinite love, which burneth to destroy all hate, which dissolves all the things to their purification. There is one more incident in India. Allahabad Magistrate P. Harrison had a chance to hear a fake suit filed by some crooked monk, Alaram Sagar, holding Rishi Dayananda and his organization Arya Samaj responsible for treason and sedition against the British government. Magistrate P. Harrison acquitted Swami Dayananda and Arya Samaj of the above allegations. He holds in his judgment that Dayananda's teachings are not targeted to oust the foreign rule, but they are aimed at reforming Hindus to the extent that they can become capable of self-rule in future. Professor A. Appadurai is quite correct in stating that Swami Dayanand was perhaps the unique among thinkers of the modern India. I vividly remember an incident from my student days when I was in the 12th class at Hindu College Sonipat. A lecture by Balraj Madhok was organized for MA Hindi students in the Hindi department. When I heard about this lecture, I decided to attend it as well. Balraj Madhok, as we know, was one of the most eminent political thinkers of his time and served as the president of Bharatiya Janasangh during an era when opposition to the Congress was barely visible in Indian politics. His lecture left a deep impression on me. It was intellectually stimulating and ideologically provocative. In his speech, Professor Madhok compared Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati with Swami Vivekananda and the other social reformers of the 19th century. He made a striking analogy. According to him, Maharshi Dayananda was like the sun, possessing his own inherent light, whereas figures such as Vivekananda, Ishwara Chandra, Vidya Sagar, Raja Ram Mohan Rai, and other contemporary reformers were like the moon, reflecting light borrowed from the sun of the West, particularly from British intellectual influences. According to Professor Madhok, Dayanand firmly believed that the path to India's progress or salvation lay within India itself, rooted in the Vedas, indigenous traditions, and the Indian Shastric worldview. In contrast, many other thinkers of that period argued that India's path of progress passes through the West, adopting Western models and ideologies. Maharshi Dayananda was a scholar of extraordinary depth, whose ideological framework was entirely grounded in Vedas. He was deeply confident that by following Vedic principles and Indian Shastras, India's own civilizational wisdom, the nation could rise to the global prominence. History, in many ways, supports this assertion. Prior to the prolonged foreign domination, both colonial and earlier invasions, India was among the world's richest and most prosperous civilizations. It was often referred to as Golden Sparrow, Sone ki Chidiya. Traders, scholars, and travelers from Europe, Arabia, China, and other regions from the globe visited India, drawn by its wealth, knowledge systems, and cultural vitality. Maharshi Dayananda was perhaps the first modern Indian thinker to articulate ideas of nationalism, social reform, socialism, and Swadeshi, indigenous self-reliance. In a coherent manner, he spoke of the principles that were largely absent from the earlier discourse and laid intellectual foundation for self-confident, self-reliant India rooted in its own civilizational ethos. European scholars like Ali Kadori have generally held the view that nationalism was 19th century European invention, wholly developed in Europe, and that nationalisms in Asia and Africa were a reaction against European domination. They suffer from artificiality. But Professor Anthony Parel, a professor of political science in the University of Calgary, Canada, remarks on this statement. And I quote some excerpts from his analysis. He says, "It is clear that judgments like this do not apply to Swami Dayananda. He is the most authentically Indian of all Indian nationalists." Dayananda arrived at a conception of modern nationalism without any direct influence from the West. It raises an interesting question about the nature of modern nationalism itself. According to the modern thought, a nation is a people that is conscious of its historical identity, its cultural uniqueness, its common language, its common territory, and its claim to self rule. Swami Dayananda's conception of nationalism meets all these requirements. And the astonishing fact is that he arrived at this by about 1875, a decade before even the Indian National Congress was founded, and the people during that period, they were saying that India is a nation in the making. Dayananda had arrived at a sound notion of modern nationalism by his own reflections and without the study of any Western writer on the subject. Regeneration of India is difficult to achieve. Maharshi Dayanand believed it without having one language, one faith, and one aim. He believed strongly that if we are not having one language, one faith, and one aim, the regeneration of India is not possible. If Indians were to emerge as a modern people, they had to do as the inheritors and the continuators of their ancient religion, the Vedic Dharma. They must have one scripture, the Vedas, one language, Hindi, and one racial consciousness, being Aryan, and one territory called Aryavarth, and one supreme political authority. According to Swami Dayananda, Vedas and the culture founded on the Vedas were the roots of Indian identity. And this was the most important nationalist contribution. Restoring the spirit of Vedas, he politicized Hinduism in a subtle way, and to a degree no other Indian thinker had done before or after him. Sri Aurobindo understood this aspect of Dayananda's thought when he stated that the restoration of the Vedic spirit included the restoration of the idea of the nationalist politics. Swami Dayananda, as a restorer of Vedism, included the theory of politics in his scope and revealed the intensely national character of the Hindu religion and morality. Professor Parel at one more place says, I quote, related to the notion that Vedas were the sources of Indian national identity was the notion that India was the land of Aryans and that Indians were Aryans. The adoption of the term Arya to refer to Indians was itself a highly significant nationalist act, since such terms as India and Hindus had either a Persian or Greek etymology. Swami Dayanand was serious about this nomenclature. It can be seen from the directive he issued to his followers to register themselves as Aryans in the 1881 census carried out by Britishers. Writing to Dayaram on 30th November 1880, he stipulated that in the coming census the following details should be given like this. Religion should be mentioned as Vedic, nationality should be mentioned as Arya. Dayananda was the first major Indian thinker to realize that a nation needs a common language. He demonstrated the sincerity of his personal conviction by attempting to revive Sanskrit as the common language of India. He later abandoned the idea of Sanskrit in favor of Hindi, which he adopted as his common national language. Satyarth Prakash is a nationalist work in a twofold sense, in its contents and in its linguistic format. A born Gujarati, he adopted Hindi as the second mother tongue and thereby set the pattern for development of a linguistic nationalism in a multilingual nation. He was able to transcend his natural feeling for Gujarati, but for the sake of a greater national cause, he gave prominence to Hindi. With respect to the theory of self-rule, an indispensable aspect of nationalism, Dayananda was far in advance of the Indian nationalism of his day. He clearly saw that foreign rule, even when imbued with parental justice and mercy, could not be a substitute for self-rule. Whatever may one do, the indigenous rule is always the best. A foreign government cannot be perfectly beneficial even when it is free from religious bias, race prejudice, and imbued with parental justice and mercy. Lastly, I would say, though Swami Dayananda was proud of India's heritage and confident of India's ability to renew herself, he was not blind to her weaknesses and to their causes. A self-critical attitude was part of his nationalist thought. He made such criticisms in his lectures and books from time to time. A nation loaded with weaknesses can never rise to its original height. In his letter dated Chaitra Shukla Shashti, Samvat 1931 and Samvat 1932 according to North Indian Panchanga, that is April 11th, 1875, written in Sanskrit from Mumbai, addressed to Gopal Rao Hari Deshmukh, a learned judge at Allahabad. Swamiji discussed developments at Mumbai, culminating in setting up of Arya Samaj at Mumbai on April 10, 1875 at 5 p.m. Through this letter, it becomes crystal clear that Arya Samaj was founded in Mumbai on Saturday, April 10th, 1875. Accordingly, it was the fifth day of the bright half of Chaitra month of Vikram Samvat 1932 or 1931, instead of the first day of Chaitra month as is often held. This letter mentions Vikram year 1931, which is according to the Gujarati Panchanga. Gujarati Panchanga remains 6 months behind as it starts from Kartika Shukla Pratipada, as I have already mentioned. When the Arya Samaj set up, initially 20 principles were formulated, but in due course of time they were condensed into 10, reflecting greater clarity, focus, and universality of thought. It is important to emphasize that Swami Dayanand Saraswati himself never held any official post in the Arya Samaj, nor did he ever seek to become its president or office bearer. He remained, in truest sense, a humble and ordinary member, devoted solely to the cause of truth, reform, and service. This itself is a powerful lesson for Arya Samajis. Swami Dayananda's life teaches that leadership lies not in positions, titles, or authority, but in character, conviction, and commitment to the principles. Therefore, followers of Arya Samaj should draw inspiration from their mentor and rise above internal conflicts, power struggles, and competition for positions. The true spirit of Arya Samaj is selfless service, dedication to dharma, and collective upliftment, not personal ambition. When its members internalize this lesson, the Arya Samaj can truly function as a transformative movement rather than merely an organization. Now we are coming to the 10 principles of Arya Samaj. The 10 principles of Arya Samaj are not merely guiding doctrines for a single reform movement. They are, in essence, universal principles for the peaceful coexistence of humanity. If the world truly seeks peace, friendship, fraternity, and harmony, these principles must be embraced and practiced by all, without distinction of nation, race, or creed. Rooted in truth, justice, knowledge, and collective welfare, these ideals transcend religious and cultural boundaries. They address the fundamental ethical needs of global society and offer a moral framework capable of resolving conflict, eliminating ignorance, and fostering mutual respect among human beings. In this sense, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the 10 principles of Arya Samaj are principles not only for Arya Samaj but for the entire world. Indeed, they deserve recognition as guiding principles for global institutions such as United Nations, for they embody the very values upon which international peace, cooperation, and sustainable harmony must be built. First principle of Arya Samaj is God is primary source of all true knowledge and of all that is known through knowledge. In the first principle of Arya Samaj, God is described as a primary source of all knowledge. This assertion rests on a profound metaphysical insight and scientific scientific insight that complete knowledge or information of creation eternally exists within God in the form of a divine blueprint. When the Supreme Being wills creation, the universe manifests precisely according to this inherent knowledge. The process of creation may be understood through a simple yet powerful analogy. The complete information of a plant resides within its seed. The seed already contains the blueprint of the tree, the species, form, and characteristics. When provided with conducive conditions such as soil, water, and sunlight, the seed unfolds its latent knowledge and manifests as that were as that very tree. A mango seed produces only a mango tree, never a neem or an apple tree, because its informational essence is predetermined. In the same way, the entire cosmos exists in an unmanifest form within Brahman. The laws of nature, the order of the universe, and the structure of the creation are not arbitrary. They emerge from the eternal intrinsic knowledge present in the divine. Creation unfolds according to this cosmic intelligence, not by chance or randomness. It is for this reason that Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati defined God as the original source of all true knowledge and all that is known through knowledge. All sciences, natural laws, and truths ultimately derive from this primordial reservoir of wisdom. Thus, the first principle of Arya Samaj is not merely theoretical, it is a profound philosophical and scientific statement affirming that knowledge precedes creation and creation is the manifestation of knowledge. Second principle of Arya Samaj is God is existence, consciousness, and bliss. He is formless, omnipotent, just, merciful, unborn, infinite, and unchanging, omnipresent, and the Creator. He alone is worthy of upasana or meditation. In the second principle of Arya Samaj, Maharshi Dayanand offers a clear and profound definition of God, addressing the widespread confusion about the divine that prevailed in the 19th century. During that period, various civilizations and schools of thought had conceptualized God in ways that often served their own interest, leading to diverse and conflicting ideas. Maharshi Dayanand sought to clarify the concept of God strictly according to the Vedic understanding. According to him, God is existent and eternal, immutable and unchanging. He is pure consciousness, devoid of any material attributes, and blissful in himself, experiencing neither pain nor pleasure. God is formless, for he pervades the entire universe. No finite form can contain Brahman. It is through Brahman that all actions, motions, and reactions occur in the universe. God is omnipotent and omnipresent, the ultimate source of all energy and activity, and he is just full, never favoring or disfavoring anyone, administering rewards according to the law of karma. God is merciful. He is not affected by criticism, abuse, or ignorance. He is unborn, never taking birth from a mother, and infinite, remaining unchanging amidst the transience of the material world. Unlike the physical world and the human body, which are subject to birth, growth, decay, and death, God remains eternal. Furthermore, God is creator, for he possesses the divine blueprint of the universe. He is the Niyanta, controller, maker of the niyamas, regulating creation according to the cosmic law. Because of these attributes, he alone is worthy of meditation. If one seeks to meditate, the only true object of meditation is God, the eternal, all pervading, and conscious source of all existence. The third principle goes like this: the Vedas are the books of all true knowledge, and it is the duty of all Aryans, means wise persons, enlightened persons, to learn, teach, hear, and read them. In the third principle of Arya Samaj, Maharshi Dayanand elucidates the true nature of the Vedas, asserting that they are the supreme repository of pure knowledge and the blueprint of creation. The Vedas, he explains, are not mere texts written by humans. They embody the eternal knowledge inherent in Brahman regarding the entire cosmos. Whatever is revealed in the Vedas corresponds directly to the manifestation in the universe. Drawing upon Vaisheshika Darshan, Maharshi Kanad observes that each sentence in the Veda is composed with perfect intelligence, because the author of the Vedic knowledge and the creator of the universe are one and the same. Hence, the wisdom contained in Vedas is mirrored in the very structure of creation. In this sense, the Vedas can be seen as a Shruti or a Shravya Kavya, theoretical knowledge of Brahman, while the universe itself is the Drishya Kavya, knowledge translated into action. Maharshi Dayanand emphasizes that the Vedas contain pure, unadulterated knowledge, and it is the sacred duty of every intelligent, enlightened, and the wise individual to study, teach, listen, and disseminate their truths for the benefit of humanity. In doing so, one not only honors Brahman but also aligns with the eternal laws of creation and wisdom. The fourth principle states that one should always be ready to accept truth and reject falsehood. In the fourth principle of Arya Samaj, Maharshi Dayanand emphasizes that a person should always be prepared to accept truth and reject falsehood. This aligns with the Vedic maxim Satyam vai devaha anritam manushyaha. Truth belongs to the divine, while falsehood is human. Enlightened beings or the wise consistently adhere to truth and shun error. Similarly, the Apastamba Dharma Sutra poses a question: Katham dikshitam bhavati? How does a student become dikshita or spiritually initiated? The answer given is Andritam Andritat Satyamupaiti Ath Dikshitam Bhavati. A person becomes divine when he transitions from falsehood to truth. Maharshi Dayananda, inspired by these Vedic principles, formulated this fourth principle to guide the elevation of human beings from manhood from mere manhood to divinity. This principle is not only moral but also practical and scientific in its implications. True progress in knowledge, science, and technology requires valid, truthful knowledge. When humans lack access to truth, they make errors in judgment and create sometimes technology that harm the environment. Pollution, global warming, and ecological crisis arise from such misapplied knowledge driven by material gain. Had knowledge been aligned with truth from the beginning, technologies would have been sustainable, safe, beneficial rather than hazardous. Thus, Maharshi Dayananda's principle underscores that truth is the foundation of ethical living, spiritual growth, scientific inventions, technological know how, and sustainable progress, serving as the guiding light for both individual and societal advancement. Fifth principle, it states one must act only according with dharma, that is, after due reflection upon what is right, satya, or worth doing, and what is wrong, asatya, or unworthy of action. In the fifth principle of Arya Samaj, Maharshi Dayananda places special emphasis on the concept of dharma. Importantly, dharma here doesn't refer merely to religion. In Vedic philosophy, dharma encompasses moral and ethical values, a deep awareness of natural laws, one's duties towards family, society, the nation, the earth, and the environment. It also signifies the inherent properties or qualities of objects and beings. Maharshi Dayananda asserts that all human actions, political, economic, social, scientific, or religious, must be guided by dharma. Every act should be preceded by thoughtful reflection on what is right and what is wrong, what is ethical, what is immoral. For dharma serves as the eternal measure of righteousness. Only actions aligned with dharma, rooted in moral, ethical principles, are worthy of execution, while wrongful actions must be rejected. This principle highlights that knowledge of dharma is indispensable, as emphasized in Bhagavad Gita, which teaches that the protection of dharma safeguards humanity itself. Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. By upholding moral, ethical, and natural laws called Vedic laws, values in thought, speech, and action, human beings ensure not only personal integrity but also the welfare, stability, and progress of society at large. Sixth principle says the primary objective of Arya Samaj is to promote physical, spiritual, and social well being of all humanity. In the sixth principle of Arya Samaj, Maharshi Dayanand emphasizes that primary objective of the movement called Arya Samaj. He defines it as the promotion of physical, spiritual, and social well being of all humanity. This principle is profoundly relevant even today and aligns closely with the modern day objectives of United Nations, which upholds the inherent rights of every human being to health, dignity, and holistic development. Maharshi Dayananda recognized that true human development is impossible without integrated growth of body, mind, and society. A person who is not physically healthy, spiritually aware, and socially responsible cannot realize his full potential and remains underdeveloped. By emphasizing the well being of all, Arya Samaj seeks not only individual upliftment but also the progress and harmony of society at large. In fact, this principle transcends the scope of Arya Samaj itself. It serves as a universal guideline for states, nations, and societies, reminding us that the ultimate aim of governance and social organization should be to ensure the comprehensive well being of every human being. Seventh principle says one should treat everyone with love in accordance with dharma and in a manner suitable to an individual. In the seventh principle of Arya Samaj, Maharshi Dayanand emphasizes that every individual must be treated with love and respect. Hatred or animosity has no place in human interactions. Every person inherently deserves kindness and compassion from others. At the same time, Maharshi Dayananda stresses that treatment must also be guided by dharma, by ethical and moral principles, as well as by the established rules and regulations applicable to the individual. The manner of treatment should take into account a person's status, position, and merit, ensuring fairness and justice in all interactions. In essence, three guiding principles govern proper conduct. Number one, universal love. Every individual deserves affection, kindness, and respect. Number two, adherence to dharma. Actions and treatment must align with ethical and moral principles. Number third, recognition of merit and qualities, status. Respect and consideration should correspond to a person's position, contribution, his merit, and role in the society. By integrating love, justice, and merit, Maharshi Dayananda provides a holistic framework for ethical, compassionate, and equitable human relationships. The eighth principle, it reads, ignorance should be dispelled and knowledge should be promoted. In the eighth principle of Arya Samaj, Maharshi Dayananda emphasizes that the vital importance of dispelling ignorance. Maharshi Dayananda emphasizes the vital importance of dispelling ignorance and promoting knowledge. Ignorance, he asserts, is the root cause of all suffering, pain, and conflict, as well as hatred and misunderstanding among human beings. In contrast, knowledge is the source of liberation, clarity, and societal harmony. As the Sanskrit saying goes, Rite janat na mukti. Without knowledge, without valid information, one cannot free oneself from the bondage of suffering or miseries. This truth can be illustrated with a simple yet profound story. A person walking at night sees a rope on the ground and mistakes it for a snake, experiencing fear and anxiety. Once daylight reveals the rope's true nature, the fear vanishes and relief sets in. This story powerfully conveys that knowledge dispels fear and ignorance creates unnecessary suffering. Accordingly, Maharshi Dayanand advocated that ignorance must be eradicated at all levels and knowledge must be actively promoted, both for betterment of the individual and for the welfare of society as a whole. By enlightening minds, fostering awareness, and cultivating understanding, humans can lead lives of peace, wisdom, and genuine progress. Ninth principle of Arya Samaj, it advocates one should not be content with personal advancement alone, but should strive for the welfare of all. The ninth principle of Arya Samaj is one of the most important and profoundly relevant principle in today's world. Maharshi Dayanand emphasized that an individual should not be solely concerned with the personal gains, advancement, or prosperity, but must actively strive for the welfare of entire humanity. This principle embodies the concept of shared prosperity. True human progress is not selfish or individualistic, but generous, altruistic, and inclusive. When prosperity is equitably shared, human society can flourish in peace, harmony, and well being. Just as the sun provides its light to everyone without discrimination, so too should natural resources and opportunities be accessible to all. It is both a humanitarian duty and a natural law that every person should have equitable access to the wealth of the world. Unfortunately, today reality is starkly different. 90% of the people have access to only 10% of world's resources, while the remaining 10% control 90%, creating a profound disparity between the wealthy and the poor. Maharshi Dayananda's principle directly addresses this imbalance, urging equity, social responsibility, and shared welfare. This principle transcends the confines of the Arya Samaj. It is truly universal in scope, offering a moral and ethical framework necessary for the well-being and harmonious coexistence of all humanities and all nations. Tenth principle is the final principle. It says an individual is not free to act contrary to the rules that govern the welfare of society. However, in matters concerning personal well-being, one may exercise freedom of choice. The tenth principle of Arya Samaj articulates a profound balance between individual freedom and the social responsibility. Maharshi Dayanand asserts that while an individual is free to exercise personal choice in matters concerning personal well-being, this freedom cannot be extended to actions that harm or undermine the welfare of society. Human beings are not isolated entities, they are inherently social beings. Therefore, while living within society, one cannot ignore or endanger the collective good in pursuit of selfish or narrow personal interest. Whenever individual desires come into conflict with the larger altruistic or societal interest, the individual must willingly subordinate personal gains for the greater good of the society. At the same time, Maharshi Dayananda does not deny personal liberty altogether. Individual interests must be freely pursued only so long as they do not obstruct public welfare or violate social harmony. Thus, the principle establishes a moral framework where public good takes precedence over the private gain, ensuring social stability, justice, and harmony. This principle remains highly relevant in the modern world, reminding us with the true freedom. It reminds us that true freedom is not license, but responsible action guided by welfare of all. It offers an ethical foundation for governance, citizenship, and social coexistence, where the interests of society at large are given rightful prominence over purely individual concerns. Thus, we can understand the importance of 10 principles of Arya Samaj. Maharshi Dayananda churned the ocean of Vedas and came out with this nectar of 10 principles, which is useful for social harmony, friendship, fraternity, and shared prosperity of the society. These principles are sufficient to comprehend the character, values, and foundational ethos of Vedic society. Thus, Arya Samaj become a dynamic movement for religious purification, social reform, and cultural self-respect. And lastly, we are coming to some major or important works of Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati. First of all, very influential philosophical work is Satyarth Prakash. Then he wrote Rigvedadi Bhashya Bhumika. He did Veda Bhashya, complete Veda Bhashya of Yajurveda, and Rigveda Bhashya he completed till 7th Adhyaya. He wrote Sanskar Vidhi, Arya Bhivinaya, Panch Mahayajya Vidhi, Swamantavya Mantavya Prakash, Aryodeshya Granth Mala, Vyavhara Bhanu, Go Karuna Nidhi. Thus, these are the 10 most important works, although he wrote around 40 books, but most important works composed by him are these 10. Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati passed away in 1883 under tragic circumstances, believed to be due to poisoning. However, his ideas did not die with him. His legacy lived on through the Arya Samaj movement, educational institutions like Gurukuls and DAV schools, inspiration to leaders of Indian freedom movement. It is said that the people who participated into the freedom struggle, 80% of the people by that time, they were influenced by the teaching of Arya Samaj and Satyarth Prakash. He laid the intellectual groundwork for religious reform, rationalism, and cultural nationalism in modern India. To conclude, Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati's life was a journey from ritual to reason, from tradition to truth. His fearless commitment to the Vedas, social reform, and moral courage made him a towering figure in the Indian intellectual history. He reminds us that true reform begins with questioning, learning, and ethical living. And here we end the first lecture on Satyarth Prakash.